Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today we are talking with Nicole Kerr, a survivor of a near-death experience and author, and she's here to share with us her story and the messages that she has learned through her traumatic experience. Strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. We have been kind of in a month-long exploration of folks who have been to the other side or have had near-death experiences and trying to understand what kind of messages we can extract from their experiences. And you have kind of probably the last 2 decades, right? You've kind of molded your life around those types of lessons or extracting those types of lessons. But the first thing we want to know is what happened to you?
Well, first of all, Sam and Kyle, thank you so much. I'm in gratitude that you have offered to put me on your show so that I can get this message out there because it really is important. I had a near-death experience when I was 19 years old. I was one of the first female cadets at the United States Air Force Academy. And I will tell you, my soul did not want to be there. And I couldn't quit. I was too ashamed. I was too feeling humiliated. But I knew 3 weeks into boot camp that place was not for me. I am not a warrior. I appreciate the military and their job is to protect and defend, but it teaches you to kill other people. And our souls are not designed to kill people. And that's why everyone that goes on a tour that experiences either being shot at or shooting someone experiences mental health problems, because it is such, your soul fragments when that happens because it's such a trauma. There's no preparation for that actual experience. So I knew 3 weeks into boot camp, man, I was like, I'm in over my head. This isn't what I want to be doing. I had people abusing me. You know, it's when you go into these places, and even like if you join a fraternity, getting hazed, you know, there's physical abuse, there's mental abuse, there's emotional abuse. And with women now at the academies, there was sexual abuse. And as a freshman, you don't get any answers except yes, sir, no excuse, sir. So you pretty much have to endure it and shut up. And it's horrible. It really is. And they still haven't been able to revamp. In fact, they just had a report out that West Point and the Air Force Academy, the sexual assault claims were up. And it's like, when are we ever going to get this message through? You know, but anyway, I stuck it out because I was a people pleaser. Let me correct that. I am a reformed people pleaser. That is an identity. Guess where I'm from? The South. Okay. Jackson, Mississippi, good old Bible Belt, you know, sweet tea country where everything, your foundation is laid on religion and God. And mine was laid in the Southern Baptist Church, because that's what my dad belonged to. And then my mother was Missouri Synod Lutheran. So we got a double dose of church growing up. And I think that's the thing that I disliked about church is it just was so much time, you know, because then you had to go to Wednesday night and you had to go Sunday night and then you had to go to revival and that was pack a pew. You know, it was just so much church. And the God that we were raised with was a duality God where God was love and protective, and he's good if you follow the rules. And let me tell you, every church has their own set of rules. And then you go, well, on the other hand, if you disobey, then the wrath of God is coming on you. You're going to hell. You're going to be separated from your family. God is judging you. God is punishing you in some way if your prayers don't come true. You know, there's even a special way to pray. You got to get on your knees and you got to get by the bed and you got to put your hands together and you have to bow your head. Like somehow that particular physical motion is going to get the prayer up better or more direct or something, you know?
I mean, it's like an antenna.
Yeah, I
Yes,
mean,
that's
it's
it.
just kind of like it's like Santa Claus, right? We learned the
Yes.
rules about Santa Claus, and there's presents if you're good, and on the nice list, and there's coal if you're on the naughty list. That's a very simple
That's
dichotomy, right?
exactly right. And I call it in the book a vending machine concept of God. That if we put in the right behaviors and we punch the right button, by God, a Coke should come out. But if a Mountain Dew comes out, that means I must have done something wrong, or if nothing comes out, then I really screwed up. It all comes back on me, not the machine. So, you have to, what the first thing that I realized in my near death experience is that's all a false belief system. That is totally man made to keep us in fear and in control. The church can control you if you're in fear. And we've got so much fear going on in this country right now. It is really people in fear, you lose clarity. Think about that. And in order to regain your clarity, you got to address your fears, right? Because if your amygdala, that part of you that is in that fight, flight, or freeze, okay, when that gets triggered, you lose the ability of your prefrontal cortex where you make all these executive decisions. It just hijacks it, and you're back in just a reactive state. Okay, so you're not making a clear intellectual decision. So that's the problem with fear. It's low vibration and it keeps you from making clear decisions. And if you're stuck in that all the time, you're not going to choose things that are good for you, whether it's food. And I'm a dietitian, and believe you me, I could work with you all day long on a diabetic food plan. And as soon as you go home and you hit a stressor, the Ben and Jerry's pint is coming out. Thing you've eaten the whole pint, and you go, how did I do that? Intellectually that it's not good for you, but you need that dopamine. You need to soothe yourself, and you can't figure out why you just did that.
Yeah.
But it happens to all of us because we get unconsciously triggered by things that we don't know where's the original source. So that's why techniques like neuroemotional technique and EMDR, all of these are starting to come out because they are dealing with the unconscious mind, which is operating at 95 to 99%. So we are really living in the past with those beliefs, and we've got to start shifting these belief systems because Earth is not going to survive the way it has been, the way our structures have been, the way our governments have been set up. So we are now at a time where that has got to crumble, and we've got to come up with some new ways where we respect all beings. Okay. And I'm including sentient beings. That's all animals. I don't care, what animal it is. And Mother Earth, and we're not doing a good job with any of that. If you think about COVID, my degree is in public health. And if you think about COVID, the first group that got it were the poultry workers and the cows, moo-moos, that beef industry is what I was trying to say. They got it and they were told to keep working, but we didn't change the way that we process chickens or cows, did we? And SARS is a animal to human transmission. I don't care if it was the swine flu where it was the pigs or the avian flu where it was the birds. It's like we've got to do a better job treating our animals humanely and fairly. And the flag went up. And did we change anything regarding animals and how we process them as a result of this, or change the factories? No, we didn't do a thing about it.
All right.
So,
So you're in this kind of like fear state at the Air Force Academy.
yeah,
How
living in
did that
terror.
how did that lead to the events that eventually resulted in your near death experience?
Okay, that's a good question. And I started my sophomore year, and I say in the book, I start out, and I will give you a free chapter of the opening of the book if you email me. That's available for people. But the name of the book is "You Are Deathless." Okay, and it's a near death experience which taught me how to fully live and not fear death. Well, I was going into my sophomore year, and the pressures at the academy were greater, especially academically. I am not an electrical engineer, and I was taking double E. I was taking physics. I was taking all these classes where my brain was just going, I can't compute this. And so we had a squadron event, and the Air Force was supplying alcohol to underage cadets. The officers were drinking with us, and I asked for. I was the last person to leave, and I asked a guy who was still there, who had a car, who was 2 years older than me. He was a senior, for a ride back. And he said, sure. He had a Corvette convertible. And I thought, wow, I'm a hot chick here. And I didn't realize he had a whole different agenda. Okay. And he wanted to go have a couple more drinks. And the bartender said, are you okay to drive? And he's like, yeah, I got this. And then he wanted to go look at the Rocky Mountains. And then dawned on me, Nicole, I think he wants to have sex with you before he goes back to the academy. And I was just like, code red, code blue, whatever it is, we got to get back to the academy, because if we're late, we're going to get demerits. So I never dated in high school. I grew up with my dad was a Marine, and he didn't believe in dating, didn't. So I had no experience. And so I'm going to a school with 4,000 guys, and I'm told 3 rules: don't date, don't smoke, and don't drink. Well, here we go to a bar, and I have 2 beers for the first time in my life. I smoke 1 cigarette, and I get in the car with him, and we never make it back to the Air Force Academy. And so this is the picture. I don't know if your audience can see it.
Let me zoom in a little bit. That's a car.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So it's like a bug that got stepped on. Oh yeah. My gosh.
That's a 65 Corvette convertible, the day of the crash in the towing lot. And so needless to say, he got very mad at me when I rejected his pass. And this is the one, go this way. Yeah. This is the one that was in the paper. I made the front page of the paper though, but you don't want to do it this way. Okay. So that you can see the car flipped over. That is them working on me. I was pronounced dead at the scene. I was clinically dead anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes before the first volunteer EMT got there. And I call him one of my angels, because some people lived in a house up the road, and they heard it, and they came out, and they tried to get a pulse for me and couldn't. So they went back and got a blanket and covered me up for Dad. And then they went over and worked on the driver, and he was conscious. He had some scratches on his back, but he basically was fine. And so I don't remember any of this. The only way I know it now is my EMT came to the hospital room 10 weeks after and told me. I have all the medical reports. I have the district attorney's reports. I pieced all this together, and then my memory came back 19 years later. Now, this happens to me at 19, and my memory comes back at 19 as I'm going to work at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia. I stop at Starbucks and get my regular drink. And then all of a sudden, boom, I knew how I was sitting in the car. I knew how I amputated my left foot. I cut up the insides of my legs. I had a 4th-degree laceration between my anal and sphincter muscle, called huge hole out of the inside of my leg. I severed my wrist. I had a horrible road burn through several layers of skin from sliding on the pavement. And I was a mess. I mean, I was just, you can see why they thought I was dead. I was at a point where I was bleeding from the bones. I was in that much extreme shock. So he undid the blanket, and he did something called a sternal knuckle press. And I don't know if you've ever had that done to you or you've seen it done, but it's designed to elicit pain. And what happened was my right eye flickered, and then my pupil dilated. So he knew I was alive. And at that moment, gentlemen, my soul flew back in through my eye. And have you ever heard the saying, our eyes are the windows to the soul?
Sure.
That's exactly what that means. My soul left when I flew out through the window, when I remembered that. And an angel, I called him Casper the Ghost for a while, but I know now that it was my grandfather, Kerr, on my dad's side. And he came down in angel form and took me while I was going through the air, because I knew when I was going to hit the ground that I was going to die. I just knew it. And I write in the book, I'm actually going to just read a small passage. And after that coffee at Starbucks, I didn't go to work. I went to my chiropractor, and he was full that day. And I sat on his floor and waited for him to go through all his patients. And then he finally saw me, and he said, Nicole, this is repressed memories, and they're finally coming up because your body feels safe. And so I say, Dr. West shifts his hands to a new set of acupressure points as I hear a sigh leave my body. I am spinning around insanely fast, like those tilt-a-wheel carnival rides, grabbing the side of the car door. I scream as my side of the car smashes head on into something. What is it? I realize I can't stop anything, and my voice fades. I fly out of my seat through the windshield. Around me, glass is shattering like splatter paint. I feel pieces of it cutting into my thighs and legs. God, this hurts. And then something slices my left foot. Bad. I try to shield my face with my hand, my mouth wide open under it. Then I'm in the air for what feels like forever. When I finally hit the ground, I understand that I am going to die. My mind freezes. I scream, oh my God, help me. Then I have one final thought. I'm not going to make it. And I didn't. And so I remembered it that clearly. So my soul flew out when I was up in the air. So I never physically dropped to the ground. So I have no memory of any kind of pain from that. The first time I remember pain was waking up in the ICU and realizing, oh my God, I didn't even look like myself. I was so bloated. I was so, just distorted and disfigured. And so I went up to another level. Some people call it heaven. Some people call it whatever you want to call it. I know I went up, and I always knew it was a male that took me, and I always knew it was a younger male, but I didn't find out it was my grandfather until this past August, and the book was published late August, so I didn't get to put this in the story. But I am 58 years old, and my grandfather died from a massive heart attack at 58 years old in late August. So this is when he came to me in a meditation and said, Nicole, I was the angel that came and saved you. I was seeing what was happening to you at the academy. I knew you couldn't quit and get out, and your life was horrible, and nobody was doing anything to help you or support you to get out of there. And so I got you, when the crash happened, I got you out. And so when I was up there, I heard other angels or spirits, and they were having conversations, and it wasn't in English. Okay. So I don't know how I knew what they were saying, but I knew it. And these two next to me they were talking about how, and I knew I was intended to hear this so I could relay it back to people, is we have to ask for help on this earthly realm. We have to ask the angels for help because of free will that we all have. They're not going to intervene on our behalf unless we ask, or unless it is a emergency, such as the case of myself, where you're dead or you're dying and you need that assistance right then and there. Because I couldn't physically bring myself back. There's no way. It had to be some supernatural spiritual intervention to cause that to happen, and cause John, the EMS, me laying there for 10 to 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, that's the only sign of life he could get. Then he got the blood pressure cuff on me, and it went 60/0. So you can see how they thought I was dead. They did CPR on me the entire way to the nearest community hospital that was not equipped with trauma. But I go back to the message on the other side. So that's the first message, is that we need to ask the angels and those on the other side for help. And I know it sounds crazy when people ask for help about parking spaces, but dadgummit if they don't get them. It's true. A parking space will open up. So I tell people, you got nothing to lose. Okay. We all have at least one guardian angel. That's a fact. Okay. I know for me, I have 6 angels around me. Okay. I tried to exit a couple of more times. I was in the hospital 4 months. Okay. 6 major surgeries, 7 weeks in ICU, 64 pints of blood. That's like redoing your system, what, 8 times?
Yeah.
It's massive. And that was at the time when they weren't testing blood transfusions for AIDS. And I remember when I got well, they called me and told me to go get an AIDS test. And I thought, oh shit, I've survived all this. And now I got to go get an AIDS test. But thank the Lord, nothing I received was contaminated. But I do remember there was a congressman who had one daughter and she was in a crash. She had 1 pint of blood and it was contaminated and she died from AIDS. So then they put that screening process into place. But that was in that time, that they didn't know. So the other message that I got was I was told that I was going back. And I was like, no, please tell me no. I do not want to get back in that body. And I could see my body. It was down there in a ditch. I could see the clothes I was wearing, my khaki shorts, my tennis shoe, my foot off. I was like, because I knew what pain and suffering was going to happen. I knew I was going to go back to being an infant and dependent on my parents. I was going to be back in that religion again. And I didn't want to do it. I was in a place that was absolute beauty, light, loving kindness on the other side. I mean, it's like I was wrapped in this cocoon or chrysalis, and it just felt so blissful, beyond blissful. The colors there, they're not even, there's the Crayola color box can't capture all the different colors that are there on the other side, and there's a lot of people that have written books and just specifically stayed on what the other side looked like and all of that. But if you condense it down, we're all on the same page about the beauty, about the love, the light, all of that. There's just, there's no sense of remembering anything bad from the other place of earth that you were on. There's none of that.
So I have a question about your perception of time during that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like the amount of stuff that was happening to you while you were out of body is not the kind of, it wouldn't match up with 15 minutes in our current perception of time.
Right.
So did you experience kind of an expanded window of time while you were out of body?
It felt like that, but it couldn't have been, because then they got me going again so quickly, and then they had to get mask pants on me to push all the blood up and get me in the ambulance and get me to the hospital. And then they had, basically they were just trying to save me that night, and they really didn't think they would. And it just took me a long time to stabilize. So yeah, there's time in the limbic part of our brain doesn't exist either. So it's really, when people say, oh, eventually you'll get over it, if you're stuck in that limbic brain part, no, that's why you don't get over something, and it's a false statement for people to tell you, oh, it'll just take time and you'll get over it, and then 10 years later, this person's still dealing with the death of their, infant daughter or whatever. They just never get over it. So yes, time is not the same as time here at all. And people, I think, one of the things that we have to realize is we exist in a much greater narrative, expanding consciousness, growing love and compassion. And it's not, yes, when we do die or someone close to us dies, there's still suffering and grief and pain and loss. And we need to be respectful and carefully and compassionately hold that and heal that. But we also have to think of that cosmic context of the benevolence and extraordinary of what comes after. And that's why I called my book You Are Deathless, is because I take the 10 lessons from the IANDS, which is the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And the research has shown that there are 10 lessons, and they're all positive about death. And so the first one is we don't die. Our soul lives on. Our soul has a long trajectory. This isn't our first rodeo. We incarnate in different times, different realms. We are not the only planet out there that has life. And some people have chosen to incarnate from another planet that has a higher vibration, that treats their people with respect. And they come here to Earth and they are just gaga at the way we operate around here about murder and disrespect and all this kind of stuff. So it's a shock for their systems to to incarnate here and to try to bring a higher vibration and light and love when they're faced with such, what do we want to call it?
Hostility.
Yeah. Yeah. And divisiveness and meanness, it's just unbelievable. And I mean, I'm thin skinned, and I just take writing this book. It's had to make me put on another layer of skin. And I'm telling you, because people will say stuff to you and you're just like, what? I'm a Christian, but I hate, this is my dad. I hate homosexuals. I said, didn't Jesus say, judge not lest you be judged? Well, they pick and choose the pieces that they want to support them. And the rest, it's just hypocrisy. And I think our generation and the ones after us are realizing the belief systems we were given, they're hypocritical and they're just not true. And, there was nothing negative. There was nothing judgmental. And that's another lesson, is there's no judgment on the other side. And I think, what a relief that's got to be for people, truly.
So when you said you felt your soul leave, your grandfather came and helped you. So you said that you had 6 guardian angels. So was it you, your grandfather, and then 5 more?
No, they've come since. I picked them up along the last 40 years.
Yeah, but I'm saying when you were up there and before they told you had to come back, was there like lots of people up there? Was it just you and a few people? Was it like what was like the setting?
The setting is there's many, but there were 2 really close to me that I could hear or telepathically get their conversation because I was picked to hear it. And this isn't a new concept. A lot of people have said this about angels. You need to ask for help, but it was really clear for me. And it was really clear for me that I need to start talking to people about not fearing death, because if you fear death, you're not going to truly embrace and live life fully. And that is not what we came here to do. We came here to live life and enjoy this beautiful planet that has so much to offer and so many differences that make us all unique. But another lesson is everyone and everything is connected. We're all energy. We're all connected. And we hadn't gotten that lesson either. It's like, no, I'm not connected to them because they're this color or this religion or this political, spectrum. And so it's been a lot more of the divisiveness, but, it didn't matter. The paramedic that worked on me, he didn't care if I was Republican or Democrat. We all bleed red. I mean, we say that in the military all the time. We all bleed red. It doesn't matter what's going on with the person. You're just there to save them. And I think so many of us, if you grew up in a church, like I did, we thought Jesus was going to save us, or God was going to save us, if bad things happen to us, or, if you were sexually assaulted, it's like, then you start questioning, where is God and Jesus and all that? Because as a young child, you want a literal relationship. You sing that song, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, but there's no evidence coming back that there's a relationship. There's no talking, there's no something showing up. So you get discouraged and you're like, this doesn't even make sense. Why do bad things happen to good people? That's the first thing I ask the many pastors that pass through my room. And they're like, well, because of free will. And I'm like, well, that really doesn't help me, does it? To try to be a good girl all my life, and then boom, I happen to get in a car with a guy who's drunk, and there, for the first time I try to have fun, I get slapped down. And so, have since developed PTSD, migraines, and, stuff like that. So, I think it's really important that people, I am here. I have given up my work. I just closed my part-time business, and this is now my vocation. I'm here to help change the worldview, the vibration, and the cultural misunderstanding surrounding death. And to do this, we have to start addressing the difficulties getting there, which are our fears.
So you mentioned the word vibration like 5 or 6 times, and that's, we've heard that phrase used in other contexts, and so I want to make sure that we understand what you mean by vibration.
Okay, so I think of getting an alignment first. Okay, so to get an alignment, you've got to have mind, body, soul, and spirit connected. Most people, including myself, are disconnected right here. We intellectually process things, but we don't embody it in terms of emotion. So for so long, I would say, well, I feel angry at the driver. I feel angry that my dad blamed me, but I never let it sink down into my body. And so I was able to think my way through it, but my body remembers. And there's a great book, Your Body Keeps the Score, that talks about how your hippocampus is where all your memories are stored, and your body, each organ is storing different emotions that you didn't actually feel and move through. So that's why when you get triggered in today, you're going back to an event where you never resolved the emotions and you're acting out of it from that age. So you're sabotaging yourself in essence from what you really want. So that's why I went into neuro-emotional technique, because I was the wellness director in a hospital, and people with diabetes and kidney disease, you have to watch what you eat, or you really are going to mess your body up in terms of amputations and, killing yourself earlier. There's some, diabetic comas. That's all real stuff. So you have to watch the foods you eat. And people would just space out on it if they got into, a stressor and do stuff that would actually harm them. And so I was like, we got to get at, why are you doing this to yourself? Why do you keep dating the same shade of guy? You're in a purple range. Yeah, you've gone from dark purple to light purple, but you're still dating the same pattern of a person. And so you have to, that's all unconscious. And that's what we have to get at in order to become aware of it, in order to change the behavior. And that's what I understood is, oh boy, I need to get in touch with my emotions, because the military and a lot of families, we are a very illiterate country when it comes to emotions. We have basically 4. If you guys remember growing up, you could get mad, sad, bad, or glad. Okay. There's not things in there like betrayal or, lack of control over events or anything like that, or even getting frustrated or angry in the South. Oh no, that was not a good look on a woman, especially, was to get angry. And you certainly don't hurt your parents. That's the 4th commandment. Okay. So, right. It's like, don't hurt your mother by telling her the truth. And so it shut so many of us down in terms of speaking our truth and our voice. And that's how most of us became people pleasers. And by being a people pleaser, you completely lose your own ability to identify who you are, your own opinions, because you're only going to say things that please other people. And at the end of the day, for a people pleaser, you're going to feel like a roach that got stomped on, because you you're not going to get anything out of it.
So the term vibration is synonymous with like an alignment.
Yes.
Body, mind,
So when you can get your mind and your emotions, you're connected to your emotions from your body. You have a relationship with your soul. Growing up, all I knew was soul food and soul music, and that your soul would go to hell in Mississippi. That was about it. I didn't know what my true soul was. And so understanding that, developing a relationship with your soul and your spirit. And when you are in alignment with that, then you're at a higher vibration. You're grounded. You're able to, if you choose, connect with the spiritual dimension, which is there's a thin veil between us and them, and you can communicate. We all have spirit guides, we have angels, and you can develop a relationship with them. And when you do, you start becoming more intuitive. You start becoming empowered and empowered to understand that God is within. There is no external God to be looking for, and that you can get that power and start speaking it and start doing it, and your vibration actually rises. So third, like we're not the third vibration, like very physical kind of stuff, very defined stuff. Then you go up to the fourth, and then the fifth dimension is kind of where people in the spiritual realm are trying, to access that through getting rid of these false belief systems that are keeping you down. Because if you believe God is judgmental and punitive and is going to, somehow keeping score on you, that is going to override that memory from 6 years old or 5 years old. If you don't address that, you may be saying, oh no, I don't believe that anymore. But in your core, that's what you're still operating under. Okay. So in essence, as you take off these layers that are not yours, this is crud that's been put on you since before birth, actually. And they're layers of they're not who you really are. They're who your parents and other people wanted you to be. And we took on those identities, and they're not serving us very well.
Okay. So you've also, in the subtitle of your book, you mentioned the phrase living fully, how to help people live fully. Mm-hmm. When you use that phrase, what's the image in your mind of living fully?
For me, it's not living in fear, because I lived in fear and terror for so much of my life that it's free of that, and that I can access feelings like joy and happiness. Because every day that I woke up at the Air Force Academy, I woke up in terror, because I never knew what an upperclassman was going to do or what was coming my way. I just never knew. And they can come in your room in the middle of the night. It was constant fear and terror. And if you're raised in that kind of environment, you have no ability to access joy and happiness, because the fear overrides that for your survival. So to me, it's being able to let go of those fears by understanding where they came from and letting them go, move them through my body, and realize, oh my goodness, I can access joy. It's not going to be all the time, but I can access it. And my doggies bring me joy. I just adopted 2 doggies 2 years ago, little Pekingese, and just sitting and playing with them brings me so much joy. And you can just see it in people's faces when they're lit up with something that they're passionate about. They're just like living life fully, and it's expanding your heart. So many people have been hurt in relationships and whatever, that they close themselves down instead of expanding their heart and their hands to help others and to love themselves. And that's another one of the lessons, is love is all that matters. I know we hear that a lot, but it's also the source of all that exists. And you think of what the source is God. So God is love. But I would like to challenge people to not think of love as only an emotion, but also as an energy, because we are all energies. And if love is an energy, whoa, that changes the whole dynamic of love, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Um, did you have something, Kyle?
yeah, we're going to back up a few minutes. Um, you said, when I said something about your guardian angels, you said you've kind of acquired them as you go to get the 6. Now, how did you go about that? What did you do? And how did you find out? And like,
It like I lived in Hawaii for 17 years and it's the rainbow state. And I was walking the beach one day and there was the most gorgeous rainbow. And this thought just came to my mind and it was like Serafina. And I go, Serafina, where in the world did I come up with that name? That's not a name I would say, And I just looked at the rainbow and I went, oh my gosh, you're one of my guardian angels. And I said that. I said, Serafina, are you an angel? And I just heard this. I'm clairaudient, so I hear things. I don't necessarily see things, but I heard yes. And I went, cool. So now I try to wear the colors of the rainbow all the time. I'm just, and part of that is my experience on the other side. It's so beautiful and colorful with flowers and music and all that, that I just, I love wearing color. It just makes me happy. And so Serafina was the first to come on board. Then it was James. And James is a military angel. And that may sound like an oxymoron, but James has been around me since the accident to protect me and to make sure that I stay alive. Because I had 2 more near-death experiences in the hospital. I was trying to get out of this, guys. I coded in one of them. They were taking me from the gurney to from my bed to the gurney to the operating room. And my doctor's like, we lost you trying to get you to the operating room. And then once we got you there, it was emergency surgery and we lost you. We told your parents, go get the funeral prepared. And then 2 minutes later, the surgical nurse comes back in and says to my parents, she's going again, So, and another time my lungs filled up with fluid and I couldn't breathe. And I thought, I'm going to die. I'm just going to drown. This is terrible. And, I lost faith in God at the academy. I really did, because I prayed so hard, like I'll make it through the obstacle course. Well, I made it, but 4 hours later, and I couldn't even move hardly because I'd been put through hell and back, So they would, push you into the water. So now you're going, you didn't make it quite over. One leg was on land and one leg was in the water. So they push you in the water and then you have to go through the rest of the course in wet fatigues and sand. And you just want to give up. You just want to say, fuck this. Excuse me. You just want to say, I'm done here. But you can't, you just can't. But anyway, so, and then I've had a couple of instances in my life over the last 40 years where there were close calls, especially with car wrecks, where by the grace of God, these cars didn't hit one another and hit us. I was in an Uber once where, stay out of Orlando, man. That city, that traffic down there is those crazy people from all over the world coming in there thinking they could drive in the US. But anyway, I'm still here and, I still deal with anxiety, driving with crazy people, not paying attention, not being conscious. And this is what this time is about, is to start being conscious and start paying attention to yourself, your soul, your concept of God, not the concept of God that you've been force fed. And is that really working for you?
Okay. So when we were talking about living fully, how does that compare to kind of like impulsivity? When people say, my kids will come home from school and they'll do something impulsive and they'll say YOLO, which means you only live once, right? YOLO, you only live once. And it's just impulsivity. And,
right.
and so from their standpoint, that's what it means to live fully, is to take chances and be impulsive. How do you view it?
That's typical teenage behavior. Okay. Is what I would say to that. Since I've been in the wellness career my whole life, when you look at just a regular wellness wheel, it's divided into quarters. I'm taking the simplest model. Okay. There's physical needs, there's mental needs, there's emotional needs, and there's spiritual. Would you guys agree with that?
Sure.
Okay. Physical, you got to take care of your body. Okay. That's about eating the right foods, which if somebody doesn't know that fast food for the rest of their life is not good for them, then they haven't been paying attention. There's just certain
But
things
it's
that
so good.
fast food nation, man. Getting enough sleep. We all need to be exercising. We need to be taking care of ourselves in those physical ways. So that's how I started my career, was I'm going to tell you what to eat. Well, the reason I was doing that is because I developed my own eating disorder after the wreck, because my parents didn't believe in getting mental health counseling, because God and Jesus were my psychiatrist. And that is just not true. And they're not going to sit there and have a session with me and give me the information I need. But mom and dad thought that enough prayer would be able to fix me. And as a result, my body had to do something with all that pain. So I just stuffed it down with compulsive eating. And I actually dealt with that for 20 years. And it was probably the most shameful, humiliating experience, because everybody looked at me and I was like thin, and they're like, how could you do that? And so I know a lot of women and men struggle with that, and it is a really hard illness to talk about, because there's so much shame in the behavior of it. But anyway, I went into dietetics to fix myself. I'm going to understand food, and I'm going to fix myself and control my eating, and realizing, no, that once I got my degree, I was like, this is mental, but you got to deal with the physical, and you have to take care of the emotional. You've got to feel emotions, even though they may be hard. You've got to encourage people to feel the feelings. Okay. And not, no, don't cry, or no, don't get angry, or, in our family, we just knew there were certain emotions we were not allowed to have. So what do you do with them when you feel them? Push them down. They stay in until another experience happens, and you feel that again, and you go, I can't feel it, so I'm going to push it down. And it just builds on each other until it starts showing up in your body, in physical ways. And the doctors can't figure out why this is happening to you. Your labs are coming back. It's because it's emotional, or it's environmental. And then you've got to deal with stress. We don't do a good job in our country dealing with stress. Look at us now with COVID. Trauma, PTSD, and nervous system dysregulation are the top 3 issues we're dealing with right now. And underneath all of that is depression and anxiety. We are not a mentally health good group in the United States.
Yes, there's a little bit of a balance, sure.
I can completely agree with that.
Okay. So, and there are not enough providers to get the people to help. I'm a veteran, and I have been waiting 8 months since the VA just closed or broke the last contract with the last mental health provider that they had. So it's taken me, and I'm in the system, 8 months to see a psychologist, and I've got PTSD, and I'm just going, thank God I've got my husband's insurance, and I've got, tools that I know to go to help me when I get triggered. But not everybody does. And you can see why so many of them are committing suicide. And a lot of people are leaving right now. A lot of souls are choosing to leave the planet right now. And then the last one is spiritual. And that is your true essence. And we all seem to be getting spiritual amnesia. We forget who we truly are as a soul, which is light and love and perfection and all these things. And we always think that something's wrong with us, or we should be doing this, or somehow blaming and shaming ourselves. And that's not who we are in a spiritual sense. Those were filters and layers other people put on them based on their value systems. Based on us, based on their value systems. So we have to undo all of that and get to our true essence. And then when you do that, boy, do you feel free, because you don't care anymore what other people think. Yeah, your parents are important, but guess what? If they're toxic, you got to get away from them, and it's hard. It's not easy, but that's what you came here to do. We all came here with a lesson to learn, or else we wouldn't have come in. and life is not easy, and I just know at this point in my life, it's taken me almost 40 years. I feel like, in the Bible, they talk about the Israelites being in the wilderness for 40 years, wandering around. And I'm thinking, well, that's been about my life, 40 years trying to manage and figure out my life to get this book out to try to help other people, and I did write the book for that purpose. I healed by writing it. I think that's another reason it took me so long, but it helped. Hopefully it will help you with your fears regarding death. There's a little quiz at the end about fearing death. There's a book club discussion. Can you imagine this being the topic of your book club discussion?
Yeah. I mean, it is a topic that should be addressed, though.
Sure.
Yes. And then to support you through the loss of loved ones. And I just hope my book would inspire you to live, fully, freely, so that you can freely voice who you are and your opinions, and that your heart and your hands you can open wide and embrace others. And you still got to watch boundaries and toxic people, but allow yourself that gift. But most of all, to love yourself, not be shooting yourself, because that's shaming yourself. And, understand that death is really just the next transition. You do not die alone, even though people didn't have someone there physically with them with COVID in certain situations. They died. People want to say alone. They're not alone. They had a whole host of angels and deceased loved ones come in and escort them over to the other side. And it's beautiful. And that's why you'll see people close to death. They'll start reaching out, or they may mumble stuff, and they're seeing that light and that presence, because that white light that I saw, that I always remember, that was the only indicator that I had an NDE. It's a clear light. It's not like a blinding light from a camera bulb, or, your headlights, where you get the deer in the headlights kind of thing. And if you think about the color white, it is actually made up of all the colors of the rainbow, because it contains all wavelengths. So can you imagine just being surrounded in all that? Oh, doesn't it feel juicy and delicious?
Yes, it does. Well, where can everybody find your book?
So
sorry,
I'm
Sam.
I'm gonna share your website here.
Yeah, and if you go to media, I've done podcasts that are listed, and this one's going to be listed on there. I do blogs every time I feel like it, but there's a contact there if you want to get on my my list that I send out a little newsletter every 3 months or so. And my book is available on Amazon. It is a bestseller. I did not believe it would be a bestseller. It's only been out for 5 months. Please leave a review, and not only for me, but other authors when you read the book, because you don't realize, I never realized how much reviews mean to Amazon in terms of your placement on Amazon, and your what do? They as soon as you hit new levels, they will feature your book more, I guess is what I'm saying.
Like you get bumped up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I didn't know any of this. And it's like they really do want to encourage people to do that, to write in comments and share their opinions. So I say to people, please do that, and it's also on Barnes and Noble's book site right now. It's the paperback is $9.99. There's a hardback. It's on Kindle as well. And I am writing I'm not writing, I am doing an Audible, because I realize that 30% of the market is Audibles. So I'm on chapter 8. I got 4 more chapters and the epilogue to go. And here's the epilogue. I got to share this with you real quick. My roommate from the Air Force Academy, she quit in December of that year, 83. She left. She never told anybody why. I found her on Facebook, got connected, and her and the two other gals that were roommates in our squadron, we all four got on a Zoom call in May. And the first thing she said to me after 38 years, and she had come to the hospital to see me, she goes, Nicole, I'm so sorry I caused your wreck. She goes, I left the academy because I couldn't live with myself if you weren't going to be there. She said, I've been haunted by your accident for 38 years. And she went back to Vermont, and she lives on the side of the mountain, and she has blamed herself for it. And she said, you asked me for a ride home before this even happened. And then when it was over, you came over and said, hey, can I have a ride back to the academy? And everybody was drinking. So I drove a senior who I was attracted to. I drove him back to the academy, and I didn't want you to be with us. I just wanted us two to be alone. And so I told you to go over there to that guy that was left. And you said, well, he's been drinking. And Margaret said, well, they all have been. So don't worry about it. Go have some fun, and I'll see you back at the academy. And she never did. And so she didn't know he was going to stop at a bar. She didn't know he was going to stop on, and want to make out. But she lived with that and actually gave up her career at the Air Force. And she was an outstanding cadet. And, it just really broke my heart that she never told me this earlier, and how communication is so important, especially when it comes to trauma and things like that. And she visited me in the hospital a lot. I was there 4 months. And she just said, I thought you knew and you were angry at me. And I was like, I never knew. That part of my memory never came back.
Wow.
Yeah.
She was just hanging on to it. That's incredible.
Yeah. So you just never know. So, I tell that to my dad, and my dad said, well, you still made a bad decision. You should have walked home. And I went, fuck you. And I've not talked to my dad since.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just like,
intense.
That's just ridiculous. That's exactly narcissistic, toxic personality. And I'm just like, I was in a freaking park, at least 25 miles away, in the dark, no cell phones. Lord knows a bear probably would have gotten me or whatever, so but that's his mentality, because he can't find a way not to, excuse me from blaming me. Somehow I caused it, Yeah. So it's been a huge family event that I had to break away from, and the rest of my family hasn't. And it's been hard. It really has, because so much in our society revolves around family and the image that family should be.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing just such a powerful story.
Was that too much?
No, not at all. No, we just really appreciate it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you.
These powerful experiences that you share. A lot of people that we know, and a lot of people that watch the show have gone through traumatic and powerful experiences of their own, and hearing someone else with the courage to share those experiences is always very helpful.
Yes.
And I will say, you got to heal those trauma wounds to move on in life, to get into that higher vibration. And if your parents don't heal their trauma wounds, they pass them on to you. And that's, my parents never healed their trauma wounds. So they're like, you should just get over it. You should just get on with life. You're walking, so you're fine. They have no empathy, compassion, or sympathy. But once you do, you have empathy, compassion, and sympathy. And that's why I put the most important credential in my name is BTDT. Been there, done that. And I know, okay? And anybody that's been through something like that, I would encourage you to put that, because that's really what matters, is the experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. Everyone, check out NicoleKerr.com and check out the book, You Are Deathless, on Amazon, on the website. Pick it up. The audiobook's coming out soon. That's going to be great. And until next time, or also make sure you like, comment, subscribe here if you like the content. And until next time, keep on exploring the edges.